Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third and final Public Information Center session of the Traffic Mitigation Committee. Just a little history. This committee was formed by the Select Board back in January. Most of the members are here tonight. Chair Mullen is trying to get here from a previous commitment in Springfield, so we could see the chair here this evening. And Select Board Chair Zulis is at the Cunningham Teachers meeting and should be here shortly. But I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Alba, who's our representative from the Milton Police Department. Tracy Dyke Redmond is one of our resident members, as well as Mr. Burke, who's also a member on our Master Plan Implementation Committee. Our town planner, Bill Clark, is here with us tonight, who's representing both the planning board and that department. So thank you for the folks that had come out. Just run through some slides here and talk about some of the information that we've collected through Wikimapps. So Wikimapps was an idea that had spawned from a complete streets policy that our Public Works Department had used to try to qualify for what is now two significant projects going on in town. The first one is the Lincoln Street project, which has made a safer routes to school, if you will, a complete street. Completely changed the dynamic of that street. If you're familiar with Lincoln Street, it carries a lot of pedestrian and bicycle traffic, especially around the hours of 7 to 8 and 2 to 3 in the afternoon. So that work is ongoing. The second project from that complete streets policy is a Hawk traffic signal, which is the flashing beacon that is set off by pedestrian or cyclist or anyone that wants to cross Reedsdale by the hospital. So that work, some test boring was done there last week, and they look to get that project underway pretty soon. So those two projects spawned out of a Wikimap. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, Howard Stein Hudson, who is our consultant on this project, set up a map. Basically, it's an interactive map for people to use. This is what it looked like over the course of our collection data. Howard Stein Hudson was very impressed with the constituent engagement in Milton. The obvious concern is the number. Traffic is a problem in our town. They were very impressed with the number of commenters. It wasn't like there were 2 or 3 frequent flyers that were, inundating the system with requests. You can see from the map, and we're going to highlight a little more. We're going to break it down a little bit for you. We haven't fully vetted all the information that's in there, but throughout the process, as you can see, we started on February 14th, and about 7 months' worth of work, we culminated that information, and they rolled it into a report for us, which we found very useful on September 10th. Throughout that process, we have been working with the Public Works Department and the Milton Police Department to mitigate some of the issues that have popped up, some of the stuff that we could, some of the low-hanging fruit, if you will. So we'll talk about that as we go through it. But just that first slide kind of says a lot. There's a lot of information there. We're going to drill down into some of the specifics and then go over some of the goals and objectives of our committee. We will be filing a report with the Select Board in December, and we're working on that. This is going to be a piece of it, not all of it. But what we're going to go through tonight is we're going to look at some of the hot spots and show you some of the areas and some of the concerns and comments that came in from people through residents' concerns and suggestions. And then we're going to talk about some of the recommendations and next steps. And then we're going to open it up to public comment. So this is a very good crowd here tonight. I appreciate everyone coming in. It is our third session. I'm impressed by the engagement tonight, as Howard Stein Hudson was impressed with the engagement through Wikimap. So again, this is where we started. We did see a bit of a drop-off, quite honestly. About 90% of the requests came into Wikimapps in the first 3 months. As many of us know, Milton gets a little quieter in the summertime. I don't know if that was something to do with it, but well over 400 of the cases that had come in, requests, comments, if you will, came in during that first 2-month period. And again, some of those have been addressed. So here's our cloud. So basically, they take all the information that was presented. The larger words are some of the main themes that were broadcast throughout people's descriptive boxes when they submitted their information. Obviously, we see cars and we see speed, right? I think every part of our town is affected affected by both from a volume perspective. We're seeing volumes in our town that we don't, we're not used to. Some of it's cyclical, some of it's commute time, but I think the overall volume of traffic in our town and through our town is significantly higher than when I moved here in 2007, and I think it grows weekly. And some of the statistics that we'll show from the radar speed monitors out there it's not a full picture of the town, but it's a snapshot, a look at time and what's going on in some of these streets. So this is what Howard Stein Hudson did for us. They broke down a lot of the information that was in the 451 comments. As you can see, traffic was the main word. Speed. They also broke it down by streets for us, and that Center Street one we can depict with a smaller map on it. But as you can see, it's a lot of the main thoroughfares through the town.
It's a little hard to read. Can you darken the light?
Sure, yeah, yep, we can do that. Sorry about that.
True for others?
It's better in the dark, yeah. Is
Yeah.
that better? Yeah. So I think the overwhelming theme here is when you look at the top streets, these are the streets that people use to come through our town, right? You see it in the evening commute, you see it in the morning commute, and all of these streets are part of neighborhoods. They're in the heart of our neighborhoods. You look at Pleasant Street, the Parkway, everything off the Parkway, everything off Canton Avenue, Randolph Avenue. Obviously, we've had some public hearings about stuff that's going on Randolph Ave, but it's all of Randolph Ave. It's Randolph Ave all the way to Adams Street. And a lot of the information that we collected, we still have to work through, but this is a pretty good theme throughout a lot of the requests. And I think the overwhelming thought that I get from it is all of these main drags are part of our community and part of our neighborhoods in one way or another. We know all the streets that are off of these. We heard from the Route 28 neighborhood when they were talking about the roundabout at the public hearing that they have trouble getting in and out of their streets. The Sassamons, the Nahantons, the Ridgewoods, even on the other side, Heather Lane. Those are neighborhoods, and it's impacted in the way people come through our town and around our town. So this is the predominance. 65% of the comments we received were safety related, and it's not just in one part of town. Those red globes are all throughout town. They're on side streets. They're on main streets. There's some on dead ends, but safety was the main theme that was captured in this 7-month exhibition that we went through. Here's a small sample of East Milton. I think it's pretty unique that you see a neighborhood with so much congestion and so much safety issues, right? So we see a lot of neighborhoods in our town that have both, right? In the morning time, I received a text from a Governor's Road resident this morning. He's way back by Warner, and traffic is backed up on his street every morning for about an hour. And then in the afternoon, it becomes a freeway. People not observing the speed limits. So it's pretty unique. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I think it's pretty unique when you see a combination like that of, almost a 50-50 split between the congestion that we're seeing, and most of those are during the commute hours, and the safety issues. And that's usually spawned from driver behavior that could be led from congestion and people not wanting to wait for the set of lights or wait for the stop sign, or they're starting to take shortcuts on streets that they ordinarily wouldn't be on. Again, here's congestion. That was a quarter of the requests that were filed. You do see pockets of congestion. You see the East Milton piece to the top right of the screen, and then you see the evening congestion, which I believe to be evening congestion on the Canton Ave end. We all know the problems that the 138 Canton Ave piece has as we travel through. But I think the main thing that I take away from this slide is congestion is at both ends of our town, right? Both the southernmost portion of our town and the northernmost portion of our town, where people, it seemed to be coming into our town and coming out of our town. Now, we had other requests, and the other requests we'll get to. It's a less specific, more general, kind of a catch-all if you didn't have a safety concern or a congestion concern. A lot of them were requests for more bike lanes, requests for dedicated bike lanes, requests for bike racks, things like that. But they just didn't really fall into the congestion or the safety bucket. So this is the Center Street one that I had talked about. This is a very specific problem that was identified by many commenters. If you can see it, it's basically Center Street over by Milton Academy is in the top right portion of the slide. And as you travel, it would be southwest on the screen, it takes you to the Reedsdale intersection, which is a very, very busy intersection. You have 3 lanes, 3 roads coming to meet basically a state highway there. And there's basically a balancing act to try to move people through that intersection. Our committee did meet with a company that has some technology that improves intersections with the use of cameras. And I'll show you a slide later that talks to that and what we're trying to do. But this you can see this is a problem. This is the evening commute predominantly, and things are just backed up on Center. Obviously, the lieutenant can talk to this. There's a no left turn on Sias in the afternoons, and there's a no left turn on Center Lane. What happens is the traffic backs up, all the way to Vose Hill sometimes. It's inconvenient for the homeowners. There's some issues with pollution and vehicles backed up, sitting at the lights, and there's noise pollution with people beeping the horns. And then you get to the intersection, and no one wants to be that one car that doesn't want to go through the yellow light, right? So they may try to run the right light, and now you've got Reedsdale traffic and Canton Avenue traffic cutting through. So again, all this information we're going to take a deeper look at when we look into our report that we're going to submit to the select board. There is no easy fix at an intersection like this, because if you release the traffic on Center, you're going to back the traffic up on Reedsdale, and you're going to back the traffic up on both sides of Canton Avenue. But it's something that we're going to look at. The Master Plan Implementation Committee received funding last year to purchase a software package. Bill, do you talk to it very quickly, Bill, about what this type of software does? I can move forward to the slide that shows. So recently we installed cameras. Jack Calabro from our DPW installed cameras at that intersection. This is the first piece in the new technology. What this camera tells us is the green tells you everything's okay at that intersection. The red tells you it's not. There's some wait time for people there. Now, what this second piece of technology, if the town makes that investment, can do is move the timing on those lights when it gets to red. So as you can see, as the day goes on, you have your morning commute at 8 o'clock. Some of those queues get backed up. It's that evening commute, that 1600 to 1200, 1600 to 2000 hours where you see the backup and queuing. But Bill, do you want to talk briefly about the software package?
We're looking to do a town-wide traffic model. The idea would be that we would look at all of the different roads, the different intersections. We'll take numbers from those. We'll figure out how many cars are going through. The software packages that we're looking at actually take the cars, and you can plug in, using these kind of numbers, you can use these and play what if. If I send all the cars just on one road, or if I take and try to split it between 3 roads, what happens? By doing the model, I can actually take and put more cars onto some of those side streets, and I can prove that that's not where you want to put them, keep them on the main roads, but this is the answer to be able to design lights, to be able to allow projects to be built in certain sections. What do we need to do to roadways to increase the volume? What are we going to do to take these kind of lights? What is the basis behind it? So it's taking the numbers from the model and plugging it into this kind of a system. The smart technology of the model, plugging it into the smart technology of the lights themselves. We expect that it should take probably 6 to 9 months to be able to do the data collection. We're looking to take and put this out for bid within the next month so that we can have this by springtime.
So thank you, Bill. We met with the city of Quincy. We brought in their traffic engineer consulting team, a company called SureTrack. Quincy has made an investment in certain intersections in town where they've not only captured this through cameras, but they've taken that extra step and added the next piece of the software application that helps the cameras talk to each other. It's a pretty unique software system that they have going. The cameras talk to each other and basically measure out who has the bigger queue, and then they release the traffic that way. And again, a lot of the decisions that are made at the Traffic Commission, they're made in a vacuum, right? And they're very good decisions. A group of people came long before I got here, and they noticed that a lot of people were trying to avoid that left-hand turn and the lights at Reedsdale, and they were inundating the neighborhood, and the same thing with Center Lane. So the Traffic Commission made a decision not to allow left-hand turns. Is it 4 to 7, Lieutenant? 4 to 6 or 4 to 7?
It used to be 3. The thought was, maybe Milton Academy students, so they backed it up to 4 o'clock.
Right. And I think that's what happens is you're keeping people off the residential streets, but every action has a reaction. And this, I think, is a reaction to that no left-hand turn or no traffic allowed on those streets, right-hand or left turn, on those hours. And if you spin the block down Reedsdale, it's the same when you try to get into Coolidge in the morning. They don't want people doing that reverse L. And those work, and they're successful. Unfortunately, you can't do it to every street, and you can't do it at every request. So, and when I say it's done in a vacuum, I'm not saying it in a demeaning way. It's just done, you take a look at that one situation, it makes sense, and, you're keeping people off that residential road because most of these people are trying to make that left-hand turn and get onto 28. So that's what we've seen. Hopefully this technology will take that next step. And this is some of the data that we've collected from the radar speed monitors. I know it's a lot of information up there, but I think the most important stuff is the big numbers on the left, right? So if you look at the sum total, right? So these numbers here, these were collected. 13,704 cars traveled northbound on Governor's Road in a 1-week period. That was in June of 2018. I'm pretty sure when they built Governor's Road, they didn't expect almost 14,000 cars to be there, right? And that is not during a school week, right? Fast forward to the other side of the screen, that was taken during a school week this past year, more recently. The numbers are consistent. It's 13,000, just over 13,000. The volume is there, right? The volume didn't go away. It wasn't a hiccup or a project on 93 or in Quincy that forced people to Governor's. People are attracted to Governor's Road for one reason or another. I think what's interesting, though, is if you can see it and if you can look at it, the weekends, which are the bottom 2 days, right? So if you look at this slide here, I believe the Saturday and Sunday were the 11th and 12th. So if the Saturday and Sunday, and someone can check the calendar and correct me if I'm wrong, but we've seen statistically throughout most of these that traffic drops off during the weekends, right? There's still a massive amount.
I just had a question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Is that counting the cars on the whole of Governor's?
No, that's just one direction.
But is it from Quincy all the way to Edge Hill?
Yeah, it's people that pass that radar monitor, which is in like the 60 block.
Because the traffic coming down Warner and onto Garden has grown unbelievable in the past 3 months.
Because it's so far backed up on Governor's, right? Yeah, and I've heard that.
Counting those cars.
Correct. Yeah, it's just people that actually vehicles that cross that monitor. I think it's it's at the Finn's house. It's right. Yeah. But you do see a drop off on the weekends, which tells me most of that traffic is cut through traffic, right? It's not people, it's people going to work and they've found a way through Governor's. It does collect some other information which we've found relevant. If you look at the bottom part of both of these two subsets, 78% of the people that pass by that radar speed monitor are observing the speed limit of 25, right? And it carries an average speed of 22 miles per hour. So on the whole, of almost 14,000 cars that are going through. The average speed is 22, but it does also capture the outliers, right? It captures the 43s, the 39s, the 69s. There's some crazy speeds on these streets. So that this is relevant information. We've worked with,
Sorry, Mike.
yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah,
I mean, also, it's worth pointing out there are 3,000 speed limit violations on that street in a week. I don't know how many tickets get written, but, we have 60 kids on the street.
right. So what Mr. Mulcahy's pointing to is that this 2994 number, these are people not observing the speed limit, right? So as most of you know, town meeting passed a bylaw in 2017 to reduce the speed limit from 30 to 25 in densely populated residential streets. This is one of them. This is the 25. So to Mr. Mulcahy's point, but I was just going to lead in that.
No, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, because we're working with the police department and Public Works to try to be everywhere at once. You're going to see, so we probably have, we started with 10 radar speed monitors. I think we lost a couple due to driving issues. But
This is, sorry, again.
Yeah.
This is partly on us, too. Everybody who drives around this town. We understand that the police can't be everywhere at once. I mean, on the radar that we have in front of Dave's house now, as far as I can tell, it's a game to some people. They want to see how high they can go. I saw somebody hit 55. I mean, that's a street, no yellow lines. I mean, it's just.
yeah, and your street is one of the streets I talked about earlier. It's heavy backup in the morning to the point where people are now taking lefts and rights to get out to the same place, or they're going west to get east eventually, right? If you're going up Warner to get to Garden to come back, you're going
Governors, you take your life in your hands.
right.
And I'm in my car, that doesn't mention the kids that are in the car.
So we have that whole thing in the morning where we have the congestion problem, and then you have the speeding problem in the afternoon. Governors has become, like, Howard Stein Hudson looked at this, and although it wasn't the most commented on street, it's very unique, and we're going to send this stuff to them as well and see if they can elaborate on some of this information, if that means anything to them. They're in the data collection world, so we'll see where that goes. But here's Canton Ave at Margaret. 39,000 cars in a week. 87% of them not observing the speed limit, which is 30, right, Lieutenant? Yeah, it's 30. And granted, you are coming off a hill, but I mean, that's predominance. I know our friend Lieutenant Foley, who's retired, would spend a lot of time up there on Canton every morning, slowing traffic, but it's just, some of these roads are just, they're almost made for more speed, and it's really hard to keep people off them, and that's a lot of vehicles on one street. And the average speed is 36. The average speed is 6 miles faster than people are supposed to be going. So it is a work in progress. The chief and Lieutenant Alba sit with myself and Chase Berkeley and Tom McCarthy from Public Works, and we try to move these things around and get some enforcement in these areas when but quite honestly, there's so much of this that it's overwhelming at times. This is Pleasant Street, the piece that goes behind the schools. I think the theme of this is the slide on the left, the 5100 is when school is in session. On the right is when school is not in session, right? So you see almost 2,000 cars less on that road. That's a conscious decision, I think, by people in our town that live in our town to avoid that backlog during school drop-off and school pickup. I really do, right? I think people just say, I'm not waiting for the buses to unload and parents to find a parking spot. I'm going left, and into the neighborhood they go, right? So this one here, I'll call it cut-through, but I'll call it local cut-through traffic. That's my opinion. But a lot of the people the majority of the people are observing the speed limit. Again, there are some outliers, the 36s and 34s. They're not welcome. I know the chief and Lieutenant Alba spent some time down there as well. But this is the information that's been collected. Kind of rowing upstream a little bit. We're trying to do as much as we can. These are some of the things that we've invested in. I mean, I'm repeating this to most people, but the speed limit townwide, when you enter Milton, you see these signs. You see a lot of them on governors, I think, on every pole. But these signs are here. That we're trying to let people know that when you enter Milton, it's 25 in these neighborhoods. We've done a lot. The Public Works job has done a great job in remarking some of the crosswalks and stop lines that we have. And then we've made an investment in some of these flashing stop signs. And again, they're portable and we can move them around. I had a conversation with a gentleman earlier tonight. I think some of these signs, they're just there for, people just, they pay attention to them sometimes, and other times driver behavior. And it's not just in Milton. I was in Canton tonight, and I guess that red left arrow means you can go left on red, but it's everywhere. But this is some of the stuff we're trying to do. The Lincoln Street project here is that picture. As you can see, that's a very narrow street now, right? They're trying to slow traffic. This is part of that Complete Streets project, the $400,000 that the town was granted. Wider sidewalks, more accommodations for pedestrians and cyclists. You're just trying to slow traffic down there. That's a 20-mile-an-hour speed zone there because it's near the school. The flashing ped sign, that's the one we installed just before Glover at White Lawn. Again, everything we can do to try to get drivers' attention on the speed limit and, pedestrian and bicycle traffic. And this is, obviously, we can walk through some of the concerns. These, again, there are many. In 451 comments, there are many, many. But as you can see, we just read some of the comments here. Pedestrian crossings and lack of are unsafe. Commuters driving too fast on residential streets to avoid congestion. We heard that theme over and over again. Every pocket of our community. Off of the Parkway, off of 138, off of Pleasant, off of Adams Street in the morning. People don't like the construction. Nothing slows commute down like construction. And East Milton's been under construction for about 3 years. So the Washingtons, the Brackets, the Granite Places, all those streets. Excuse me. And then drivers just ignoring the bottom one. I kind of spoke about that earlier. And high speeds and aggressive and careless driving. That was a theme we heard over and over again, not just around the schools, but more importantly, or more pronounced in the neighborhoods when kids are home from school or in the summertime, and people who probably don't know their way around town, and they're looking at a GPS device on their screen telling them which way to go. Here's some of the other ones. And we have taken some measures. I know there was a concern about there was an accident, more than a concern, there was an accident at Central Ave at the trolley crossing. We met with the T in May. We talked to them about that. They are in the process of, on October 4th through the 7th, they're going to redo that traffic crossing. And at that time, they're going to install the electrical conduit for what's called flashing bucks, crossing bucks, which are those railroad signs, if you will, that when a trolley, high-speed trolley is approaching, that will flash. There are stop signs for the trolleys, but that was an engagement we had after a lot of comment came in when the T was here talking about the improvements to the high-speed trolley line and subsequent accident that was there back in March, I think, March or April. And a lot of concerns about the posted speeds being too high. And I know there's a lot of questions coming in. We had a resident from the Gulliver Elm Street neighborhood over here. They are subject to the traffic light in the morning at Thatcher and Canton. Some people don't appreciate how long it takes you to get through that. And then now they're ending up on Gulliver and Elm and working their way down to Channing. And they're looking for some improved signage down there and possibly making it a school zone because they're so close to the schools. But we saw a variety of stuff. We saw overwhelming themes. Obviously, making more traffic enforcement and higher speeding penalties. I don't know if it's allowable under state law to.
More regulated.
Yeah, it's more regulated then. Yeah. Traffic calming measures. A lot of people are looking for speed humps and speed bumps. We do have some around town. They've been there for quite some time. We have a raised intersection down here on Thatcher. We have some speed humps up on Hillside. We did receive certain complaints, specific complaints about do not block the box. We painted a do not block the box down at Adams Street and Wharf, and more often than not, people aren't observing it, right? It comes down to enforcement. I think most of my career comes down to enforcement. We have trash, people putting trash out improperly, that's enforcement. We have developers not building stuff properly, that's enforcement. We have stormwater runoff, that's enforcement. We have people not observing traffic moving violations, that's enforcement. So that is a theme. It's not going away. The Milton Police Department is aware of it, and they're working on it. And then some people actually talked about making their street one-ways. So again, the idea of this committee, and I know I'm going on, was to formulate some opinions and get some hotspot areas and run a report to my board. And Select Board member Zulus, who will be here shortly, is part of this committee and is helping us write this report. With that report comes funding, right? Hopefully comes funding. We are a zero budget committee. We can make all the recommendations in the world, and that's why I think it's important with all the small stuff that we're doing through the Traffic Commission. We're moving some stop signs around. We're putting in some crosswalks that weren't there yet or there before. So all that stuff we're trying to do, that's the low-hanging fruit I've been talking about. But ultimately, this committee is going to submit a report to the to the Select Board in December, and we're going to ask for certain funding amounts that may come to town meeting specifically. These are some of the other resident suggestions we've heard, and this is a project, that top one there. So the MBTA has been working pretty well in Milton and pretty well for Milton. They have this new Better Bus system. So we had suggested a couple of ideas to the MBTA. In September, they released their fiscal year 2020 Better Bus programs, and our recommendations weren't one of them. But this is something that we've submitted. I think better bus traffic and routes through Milton will keep a lot of cars off the roads and keep people from coming through our community. So that's something that we're working with the T on. We're going to submit our FY21 information to them as well. It's going to be a similar package, but just reinforce the need for better bus routes in Milton. I think I used to take the 240 bus. By the time I got on the 240 bus at the corner of Reedsdale, it was full. It did come very quickly, but it's a full bus. I think increasing some of the bus routes in town and specific routes, something that could take us to North Quincy. Currently, I think the 215 and 245 end up at Quincy Center. But something that would make it a little easier for people to get to Boston, which is most people's destination in the morning. This is kind of just a summary here that all this information, we've been working through it. I think most of the important stuff we've found has come through the comments. The information sessions we've had have been very good. I'm very impressed with the people here tonight. So with that, I'll open it up to comments. We have a microphone here. If you could sign in with your name and address. This will all be documented. I did read 2 comments in. There was another comment we received from Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson is looking for a traffic signal to be placed at the intersection of Blue Hill River and Unquity, or Hillside. Currently, there's a stop sign there. I'd call it, what do you call it, a 3-way stop sign, Lieutenant? Yeah, he's looking for a traffic signal to be pushed through there. So we're trying to work with DCR to at least have a traffic engineer out there to take a look. So there's a lot of stuff going on in town. There are some projects and some corridor studies and investments to be made in the town. Obviously, we have the East Milton Deck project, which was advertised, and that part of that, most of that is to improve the movement of traffic through town, through the square, and make it safer for all modes of traffic, especially pedestrians. They're going to widen the bump out the sidewalks at the post office and make it easier for people to get across those. That it's very dangerous. We know how quick people drive on Bryan Ave and Granite Ave during both commutes. So that project's coming. The Route 28 Chickatawbit, that's entering possible 25% design. There's been a public meeting here. They're going to come back in December, I believe, and revisit that. The 138 corridor study, there's going to be an information night to be determined. I think it's October 22nd. So there's a lot of investment coming to the town in infrastructure. And we're going to use this when we sit down and speak with all of our officials. We've used it in the 138 corridor study. We're going to ask, I know Select Board Member Zulus, Select Board Chair, asked the MassDOT rep who was at our board meeting on September 4th if they could look at the entire corridor on 28, not just that intersection up there, because what happens at that intersection is going to spill off down into that neighborhood and probably put more burden on people getting in and out of their homes in the afternoon. So anyone want to come up and voice a comment or?
Is this presentation someplace where we can view it?
Yes, yeah. So if you go on the town's website, townofmilton.org, there's a link called Traffic Mitigation, and it'll be embedded in that tomorrow morning. And all of the radar speed reports are in there, and it's a lot of information, but, you know, and you can get lost in the information, but it's a lot of data that we've been collecting and using as we work through this process with the Traffic Mitigation Committee.
And a general question, how does it, if you have no truck, if you want to-
Can you just come up to use the microphone? It's,
Well, just is, we have to be designated to have no trucks. What's the criteria?
he's asking that,
Oh,
Milton Access, sorry, they can't hear you. Thank you.
Yep. Katie Schmidt, I live at 62 Churchill Street, and I saw you had truck traffic and to restrict it on certain streets. What's the qualifications so that I understand that about restricting truck traffic? Because I think Churchill Street is one street that's off the parkway that's used a lot by trucks because it's a cut through from Kaler. It connects, and you can go across the parkway there, and you have Thatcher Street. So it's a nice way to miss Mattapan Square and get over to 138. And the end of it at 138 is not very wide. And if you have a truck there, no one can pull in. And in the morning, the parents who go to the Tucker School can't go down Oak Street anymore, or it's one way towards the parkway.
Correct.
So they come down Churchill, take a right, and then go down Oak Street. So that adds to the traffic on our street. And we also have a number of walkers because we're close to the school. And people go down there pretty fast, like everywhere, because they're late to work or they're late to drop their kid off or they need to hurry along. And we have a lot of kids on the street. We have about 30 driveways that come out on the street, 50 houses, and it's a very short street. So, and I wrote 2 emails into the committee, one about speeding and one about pedestrian safety. So I'd like those, I gave them to the secretary tonight to make sure they went through because I'm not sure they did or not.
Okay, yeah, and I did see a good few about Churchill when I perused the information that Howard Stein Hudson put together for us. Lieutenant, do you want to come up and just talk about the truck restrictions? And
The truck restrictions, you have to apply to the state for, they have to have an outlet. So say, you'd see like a bridge, you'd have to have a direction for the truck to go to not utilize that road. So it has to be filed with the state, which I haven't seen much truck traffic on Blue Hills Parkway. They need a permit because it is a DCR road and it's not given out very often. I haven't seen much truck traffic on it, so this is news to me on Churchill Street. But you would have to have a designated route that truck could follow that would allow the weight of the truck, the size of the road and things like that. So it has to be.
Just have to go to Mattapan Square.
Yeah, usually something like that takes a DCR road, they're lost. They're on a road.
Oh, yes.
It's not someone who's, making that run quite often. It's usually someone maybe that doesn't
I
take it.
understood when they put the light in at Canton Avenue there at the end of the parkway.
Right.
That the businesses there were able to waive the no trucks on the parkway.
Right. Like an oil truck going to your home, you can't interfere with commerce.
Right.
So there's certain UPS, The truck would be something over 2.5 tons, which is basically 5,000 pounds, which is not that big when you're talking trucks. A small dump truck would be in violation of that, a landscaper. So they have to go to certain places, so they would kind of be excluded from that, doing commerce. Delivering a package, delivering home heating oil, things like that, doesn't really apply to them.
No.
But the tractor trailers or something you're talking to on those, it's got to be a lost, person driving that truck. But to get the restricted, you have to have an outlet for that truck to go, to
Well,
utilize a different
Yeah, all
road.
they have to do is continue on Thatcher Street and not take
What they
a
should do
left
is stay on
hand.
138, the state road, and go straight into Mattapan. That's what they should be doing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, and one other thing, we're a block from the Tucker School, and I was interested to see that Lincoln Street came to 20 miles an hour. You probably read it, but we either need a stop sign where Lothrop comes in there, because you cannot see the cars coming in towards the Parkway when you're going out that way. And it would be, if we can't do the stop sign, then we need 20 miles an hour on the street.
I think the Traffic Commission, I think this came up at our first public information session, the stop sign at
Lothrop?
Lothrop and Churchill.
At the warrant for there's a uniform traffic code that allows us to install stop signs at certain places. It has to meet a certain code. So many vehicles traveling that, and if it doesn't meet that, John Thompson, the town engineer, would do a traffic study of that and count the vehicles that are using the road. If it doesn't meet it, or if it is a bad line of sight, you wouldn't want to put a stop sign on a curve, say. There's certain criteria it has to meet, and I don't believe that one met it.
But I thought there was a stopgap that they did, the Traffic Commission did decide to do.
That was
up
on
there.
Church, right on Church, I think they changed it, maybe moved it up or moved it forward.
Which one are you talking?
They would have been, I think Churchill's is what you're talking about?
Churchill
But they made it
Street.
more visible. I think maybe the signage was maybe placed in a spot that wasn't visible or things like that.
Oh, we don't, I mean a 25 mile an hour sign?
No, the stop
So
sign.
the stop signs you're talking? Is that what
No,
you're
the
talking?
stop sign down Lothrop, there's one there.
Yes.
But there's, people just zip back
Zip
and
through
forth
it?
on Churchill.
Okay,
And then I think it needs to be, if you can't do the stop sign because of restrictions,
Right.
it needs to be a 20 mile an hour zone, because it's one block from the Tucker. It's used by parents who are driving through, and it's used by walkers.
Do you know
I think
the
that has to be-
regulation on
That has to
that?
be in a certain radius of the school. Certain schools don't apply, like you won't see it at like the high school, say. But
Mm-hmm.
elementary schools, things like that. The zone, I'd have to check with John Thompson on that, but they would have to be within a certain radius of the school, not just basically a route to the school.
We're a block from the
Yeah,
Tucker, I
but
don't
it
know
would-
if that
maybe-
counts.
You may have to like cross the path of the school, things like that, like Little Parkway, Wood, or Oak. But I will check with him on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schmidt. I do want to note that Select Board Chair Mike Zulis is here, and Vice Chair Melinda Collins is here. I think that's it for my board, but welcome. Thank you. No, that's Cunningham School. Yeah, how was traffic? Right. Anyone else want to come up and, I mean, I don't have many answers for people tonight with respect, like, this wasn't where we were going to open up an envelope and say, you know, Governor's Road, you're the winner tonight. But, no, know that there's been a lot of work put in by this group. And I can honestly say, this is one of the hardest working committees I've ever been on. I've been in government almost 30 years. It's a great team. Everybody's skill set really worked well. We still have, obviously, we have a lot to absorb with the information. And I think what it's going to highlight is there needs to be an investment made both in infrastructure and some other things in town to make sure that we try to mitigate some of the problems that are clearly identifiable and identified by the residents. Good evening.
Judith Gunderson, 32 Woodchester Drive. I have two questions based on your discussion before I get to my main point. The one-way do not enter signs that are on, I think there are 3 streets coming off of Adams. Otis, I think it's Waldeck, and there's another one. Those signs are facing toward East Milton Square. They don't face people coming down Milton Hill. And so very often you see somebody get there, suddenly see the sign and come to a, screeching stop, or they just keep on going. So I don't know if you can do, signs like this on both sides. The other thing is those numbers are very small, so that if you get you have to get really close to them to see what the hours are, and I think the hours are 4 to 7. But
I think those were one of the first streets that got
I think
restricted.
so.
Yeah.
And if they ever get to a point where they can make a little bit larger, signage, it would really be helpful. And also this kind of a
Concave,
corner
yeah.
thing, yeah, concave, or just 2 sides, one, because you either come from one end or the other.
It's
And-
very visible coming from Squantum Street.
Absolutely.
Not visible coming
Absolutely.
from
Absolutely.
Cary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that I've seen a police officer on the corner near Squantum recently, because people blow through that stop sign constantly.
Yeah, and that's one of the other investments that's going to be made too, that the town meeting approved in 2017, was to figure out that intersection and possibly put a traffic signal there. And those will be state dollars that pay for that.
Now, yeah, I think a traffic signal would be good. I think in a couple of places I've seen, there've been the flashing ones, but I don't think on that corner it's going to make a whole lot of difference, because people are just too used to just kind of skirting. They don't even hit their brake.
Right.
They just
And those sign restrictions lead people up the other side of Governors, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to take the left, and I'm going to sneak that right on Governors.
Right.
Because I can't go up Waldeck, Otis, or, yeah.
Right. One of the things that I noticed when you were talking about the amount of traffic on Governor Road, my suggestion, and I have brought it up before, and I'm bringing it to the committee. I have 100 people who signed a petition that I stood outside of the one of the schools in front of the Cunningham Gymnasium when we had our last election. And I could only, you can't stand in front of the school, you have to stand off to the side. So I only got the people coming from
The
one side.
lieutenant didn't remove you, did he?
Yeah, no, he didn't, but if it weren't you, it was someone else who explained it to me. So, no, I understand that. Every single person, and I am not exaggerating, except for 3 people, and I got 100 signatures in a few hours. 3 people did not sign. 2 who said, I never sign anything. 1 who said, I really want a skate park. And 100 people who literally, practically grabbed the pen out of my hand. I'll sign it, give it to me. And that was the kind of response that I got. Adams Street Bridge needs to be reopened. I understand that there's been a whole lot of effort with particularly the company that's doing all the modifications around the square. But it is beyond ridiculous to think that if you could go simply straight across from west to east in less than 100 feet, that you now have to go 3 times that and go through 3 lights and stop and idle, stop and idle, stop and idle. And people are not respecting the lanes. They'll come around the corner, 2 cars like this, I'm over here, I suddenly realize, oh no, I want to go over there. The next thing you know, when you get to the corner of Boulevard, there's a big traffic jam. Or they're speeding through because they're going to be the last one to make the red light. I have heard from so many people, and there was in fact a survey done on, I think it was Milton Scene about 2 years ago, and 83% of the people were highly in favor of reopening the bridge.
So my board has been working with MassDOT to reserve the air rights over the deck. And part of that is to leave Adams Street as a street in case it's
So my-
petitioned to be reopened.
So my question is, when does that happen? How much long? I mean, when I took this survey, I said to people, do you realize how long it's been? And people kind of guessed. It's been 7 years. It started in 2012. The idea was simply that we do not want to have a lot of people racing through that area because we're going to have parking here. And so parking on the deck is going to need to come out and go in. And so we don't want these people to be flashing by here. We want them to slow down. So let's have a trial. That trial has gone on for 7 years. When is the point? And saving the rights, the air rights, is a great idea. But I think we're at the point now where the traffic is so crazy.
So that contract for East Milton Square, the federal highway earmarks that the town received,
Yep.
That was advertised about a month ago. That project does not include Adams Street being
I know
opened.
that.
But that's why my board reserved the right to open it if need be.
So
So I can't answer your question tonight,
Okay.
but know that Adams Street in its existence will continue across the deck
to not be,
through the construction process.
okay. The other comment that I would make, looking at the Governor's Road issue, is I think that a lot of the traffic on Governor's Road, quite frankly, is trying to avoid the square. Because those people would normally go through the square and come up Adams or Edge Hill or wherever, or proceed on. But now they're coming through Governor's and crossing over to get wherever they want to go. So.
Yeah, yep,
I
don't,
can't
I
tell
don't
you
disagree
how
with
much,
you, but
but-
the people who live on that street will, you can tell when something happened on 93 in the morning, because
Oh,
it's backed up
absolutely.
even further.
Yep.
And that's when I think the left turn, every day the left turn probably ends up on Warner and the right on Gardner. But yeah, usually it's people not choosing to get on the expressway,
Right.
or, you know, the East Milton
Not
thing,
go
we've
through
talked
the
about it
square.
before. People get off before East Milton, go through the square, and then get back on at Granite Ave, because
Right.
that's what the software system tells them to
Right,
do. And it may be telling them to, you know, get off at Furnace Brook and work your way through Governor's.
Right.
But yeah, all very, very relevant points.
Okay.
I think the only thing I can say to you is Adam
Can I
Street.
leave you with these
Yes, most
people's
definitely,
names?
yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that, quite frankly, was only in a very short period of time. It was this knee replacement that kept me from going after more of them, so.
And I must give you credit, Skundison appeared at one of our 7 AM Traffic Mitigation Committee meetings to present to us. So,
Before
Yes.
the knee replacement.
yeah. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? How are you, Roxanne?
Good, how are you?
Good?
Hi, I'm Roxanne Musto. I've been to several of these meetings already, so I don't want to try to rehash all of the points, but a few things that have come up recently. First, I want to thank the police department because they have been running radar on the street and pulling over some of the trucks. That being said, we've seen an increase in the speed of cars now coming down the street and cutting through.
This is Milton Street.
Milton Street, and
Yeah.
that's over on the west side of town. The other thing is that tractor trailers are going down again. And in fact, I'll show you a picture after the meeting. I have a tractor trailer that pulled onto the bottom of the street and was like, where do I go? I don't know where to go. And I pulled up next to him. All these cars kept passing him, and I pulled up next to him and I said, where are you going? And he told me he was going to the produce company that is where Stop and Shop Warehouse used to be in Reedville. And I asked him, why did he come down my street? Did he see the signs? And he said, well, I didn't know. I didn't know I couldn't go on the street. And I said, well, you missed the parkway where trucks are allowed to go. He's like, I didn't know about that. So this, I don't know if they're not, the sign for the parkway, and I've said this before, is a problem. And when we get to the 138 study, I will bring it up there. But that being said, they are still going down the street. So my question is, I know like in Westwood, for instance, they have traffic mitigation, like if you're going on Canton Street, it says traffic mitigation area, and they have these little like islands sort of in the median of the streets. And I'm wondering if, you know, where Milton Street, you've got that real flat area where cars sort of speed up before they go down the hill if they're coming from 138 down. If you had one or two of those, if that would help, number one, the trucks would figure out pretty quickly you can't get down that street. And number two, it would slow down the traffic. You know, either that or we've got to do something. I know you don't like speed bumps, but, you know, you've already done some of the stuff in town. So the traffic island kind of thing, I think is worth looking at, only because I've seen it recently in Westwood, and that was because some of the trucks were cutting through to go to Westwood Station and things like that. So I've seen that. But I think we have to look at that because my neighbors are constantly talking about this. And I'm a town meeting representative from my area too, and so they talk to me about it. And it's becoming more and more prevalent with the speed of cars, the cut-through traffic like everybody's having, and now we're having more of these tractor trailers. So I think it's worth looking at that.
What-
Okay, go ahead.
If I might,
Sure.
I know you were here at the last meeting, and I appreciate it, and we went out the next day, so there's a sign on the state highway that says Neponset Valley Parkway, left.
Right.
It's too far.
It's too far
Which pushes
forward.
people to Milton Street. We're working with MassDOT. I don't know if they're not dealing with that yet because the whole 138 project is coming.
Probably,
But we went out
yeah.
and we completely understand what you were talking about, that For those of you in the
Yeah.
audience, as you come northbound on 138, the sign for the trucks to get on the Ponset Valley Parkway is too far. And by the time they see
They
the
miss
sign,
it.
they miss it, and they end up on Milton Street.
And there's actually like a signpost in front of it, because I was there the other day and I took a little photo, and I could see how you can totally miss it. So I understand that, but.
So
and
do you
the-
think that my question was, do you think the majority of the trucks turning left is because they missed the Ponset Valley Parkway, or just because
I
they're
don't know.
they're taking a left?
Well, the guy that I pulled next to, he said to me, I didn't know there was a turn there. You know, I saw the light here and I took the turn. Or he just didn't realize that it was in the Ponce Valley Parkway, or maybe his GPS isn't telling him. I don't really know. But what he told me was that he thought this was where he was supposed to turn. And I said, didn't you see that there's no truck signs at both ends of the street?
Right.
I said, didn't you see those? And he's like, you know. And the other thing, what I brought up before, which I think we really have to be aware of, is what our neighbors are doing. So we're very close to Reedville and Hyde Park. And Reedville did just get approved for that 250 units right over Sprague Street Bridge, which is close enough to us. And then they're looking at that other development I told you that's much closer to us on the shorter bridge. So a lot of that traffic will go through Dedham, but some of it's going to trickle up to Milton. So I think, my point is, I think we also need to talk with our neighbors, whether if you live in East Milton, like what's Quincy doing that's close to East Milton, and also what are Hyde Park and Reedville doing that borders close to us, because that will affect us as well.
And I don't think you were here for this slide, but 25% of the requests that were made on Wikimap talked about congestion.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, it's your pocket there in the bottom left corner, and it's East Milton,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of it is directly related to communities coming around us.
Yeah,
A
a lot of cut through,
Quincy's a booming economy. A lot of people won't take the Neponset Bridge.
Yeah.
So where are they coming? They're coming up Beale, and they're coming up the Parkway to Adams
Yeah.
Street, which now puts them in East Milton Square. You see a construction project or a set of lights, I'm going to take a right. I'm on
Right.
Granite Place, now I'm on House Circle, and, they just work their way through the neighborhood. So I think very similar to your situation where a neighboring community is kind of putting some undue pressure on. And it's the
Right.
same thing in East Milton with Quincy's economy.
Right, so I just think it's smart for us to talk to them too, and, so that we're sort
And we
of
have
aware-
been. We
yeah,
brought
right.
in a couple of experts from
Good.
Quincy and Boston. Not so much Dedham or some of the
Yeah.
communities to the west, but
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Roxanne.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Lee?
Gotta have something to say, right?
Thank you very much. Lee Toma, Aberdeen Road, and member of the Bike Committee, Traffic Commission, and School Transportation and Traffic Safety Subcommittee. I have to say, after sitting on the Traffic Commission for a while, I've been a little bit frustrated that it's not, it seems to be more reactionary than anything else. People saying, I'd like stop signs here, and do not enter signs, things like that, and not dealing with the overall problems. So I'd like to thank you very much for your efforts in doing the Traffic Mitigation Committee to address these things. So I think it's a good work that you're doing. So I've got a few requests I'd like to see. I'd like to see the town itself advocate for more transit. Obviously, you've mentioned buses. The state will be doing a lot of work on the trolley line, and there's an opportunity, I think, for the Fairmount line to serve Milton a lot better. So there's talk about maybe increasing the frequency of service, changing the fare structure so it's easier to park at the Reedville station and go in that way. So I think that could benefit Milton a lot if the town were to speak in favor of that. I'd also like to see the town encourage more families to take school buses or carpools at schools. And the town could do better at installing pedestrian and bike wayfinding signage, encouraging people to use existing trails like the Pine Tree Brook Path, the Turner's Pond Path, and the Collycott Footpath to get people to and from schools without having to drive there. Obviously, there's major corridors and improvements, intersections that need improvement. Route 28, of course, 138. I'd also like to see Truman Parkway a little bit safer, and the intersection of Neponset Valley Parkway and Brush Hill Road would be another example. And I'd also like to see the town advocate for legislation for safety, such as distracted driving enforcement and potentially automated enforcement at places like school zones, things like that. So thank you again very much for your attention and for all your efforts on this.
Thank you, Lee. One of the things I didn't see, and I haven't worked my way through all 451 requests, was a park and ride, right? There are a lot of communities to the south of us that are using their council on aging and the vans as a shuttle to and from, right? For us, it would probably be to Mattapan Station or one of the high-speed trolley line stations. If we could find a place to house these vehicles. I know we have a partner in town that has a parking issue as well, and they're using parking off-site. But it's something that these communities are doing, and these are the people on the commuter rail. So what they're doing is they're creating park and rides for people. There is one, it's not necessarily a park and ride, but up at Blue Hills, which is full most days, and then there's one down on Granite Ave, just before the on-ramp. But that's one thing I didn't see in any of the comments, and I haven't gone through all of them yet, but that's something I thought I would see, which is a little more, let's take people off the road and get people onto mass transit. We did have a gentleman who spoke at the first public meeting over at the library who recommended that we become less stringent with enforcement of parking up near Central Ave in the business district, because most of those people are parking to jump on the trolley, and in essence, they're basically being punished for taking a vehicle off the road, and I hear his argument. Unfortunately, we have a limited amount of public parking spaces in and around our business districts, and we need to maximize those for our businesses, but his point is well taken. You know, here's people trying to take public transportation and reduce the footprint of vehicles moving through our town. So it's something to look at, but not something I saw specifically in the comments. But
Has there ever been any suggestion that the commercial area right opposite and into Boston, opposite the trolley station on Central Ave, would they allow, say, 20 parking spaces to be used? That's a pretty generous parking area.
so the question is, would the land opposite the Central Ave T station has the town engaged someone to allow us to park cars there? We have not. It could be something to think about. On the other side of the brook?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. It's something we could take a look at.
A dozen spaces, at least 10, a dozen, whatever, would take the burden off of the street.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Schmidt?
I just like to, we have a lot of things we want to have done, and we actually could come to a meeting tonight of the Traffic Mitigation Committee and speak, and I think that's terrific, because we would have nowhere to go. And I appreciate the work that you're doing, and it's excellent. Thank you for being there.
No, I appreciate that. I really have to thank the chair of my board, Mike Zulis. This committee didn't exist. He came on the board last year and immediately put this together. I was a bit confused because we had a traffic commission, but it didn't take long to realize that this was a bigger thing, almost to Lee's point, where we're looking at like a global approach to traffic in our town. And again, I started off, for those of you that weren't here, there were 451 comments on the wiki map, and Howard Stein Hudson does this for a living, and they were very impressed with the engagement by the community. Understanding it's a problem in all parts of our town, but the engagement piece and the amount of people that have come out in these 3 info sessions, and the emails that we've gotten and continue to get, and we will continue to accept them, and we'll probably have to put the final pieces on the report in early December before we present it to the board. So the comments, we'll still be listening, and I appreciate everyone here tonight and anyone who's participated in this.
Go beyond just making a comment, I was really flabbergasted by the amount of data. Mm-hmm. And I think that if people were exposed a little bit more to it, or if they were somehow encouraged to get onto it and look at it, it's overwhelming when you think about it. 13,000 cars on one street just at one time of the day, it's just...
Right, and we did receive some comments when we had the public hearing about Route 28. A lot of the people, or some of the comments that were made, that they already saw a dot there, so they didn't want to put a dot there.
Oh.
right? So that's something that we have to clarify next time, that you can still voice your opinion even if you see a similar request there. The one thing I wish we could do is collect information from the user so we could re-engage with them. They gave each user a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but we don't know who that person was, to re-engage with them and talk about some of the stuff that the Milton Police and Public Works and my board have been doing to mitigate some of the stuff that we can, for lack of better terms, triage while we work through the system. Obviously, the bigger projects and the bigger, global approach to traffic mitigation would be, a much slower movement. But, and again, we worked with the Traffic Commission. To your point, the Traffic Commission may take on a different look in the future. It might be something that's more proactive and less reactive. That was talked about at one of the meetings. But all this stuff will be summarized in the report. And I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Sure.
When I was around the last time we talked about the traffic governors, and it seemed like one of the reasons that nothing really was accomplished was because they couldn't figure out what to do with the overflow that wasn't going to impact the other neighborhood streets. Is something like that being given consideration with the board now when you're dealing with governor's traffic?
Yes, so our DPW director has had a conversation with the Quincy DPW director and their traffic engineer, and John Thompson, our engineer. Quincy is thinking about making some changes to what they allow people to do on Governor's Road, and they're looking for buy-in for us. It's a very preliminary idea, but I think they're seeing the same impact. Obviously, they have speed bumps on their side of the fence, but they're trying to mitigate some of the traffic there, and they're working, both Public Works directors are working together. I won't say there's anything that's being baked right now, but there's a conversation going on specifically about Governor's Road. And
But it will also include the impact it might have if you do something like that.
yes.
To either Garden, Huntington, or Plymouth.
Yes, so that point we're seeing loud and clear. That it's and the chief has said it before. I can police speed. I can't police volume, right? And the more of these signs you put up, these restrictive signs like the ones you see on Adams Street, it's a tube of toothpaste, and you squeeze it, it's got to come out somewhere. So yeah, all of these steps, and that's that software that the town planner was talking about. If you stop traffic on Governors and try to change the flow, this software has the capability of telling you, well, this is what's going to happen if you do that. So yeah, yeah, you're welcome. Good question, very good question. All right, so I think we'll wrap it up. I want to thank everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.